All right.
Good evening, Littleton. This is the Charter Committee meeting on August 18th.
Wow.
We're not doing that. And we've got some interesting visitors here tonight. We're going to have the Groton Town Manager, Mark Haddad, or do you say Haddad? Who some of you may know from his prior years in Littleton. He's been a lot of different places, and he's been through the charter process in several different towns, and he's going to share some of his experiences and answer some questions we have on that. And then after that, we're going to have both the police and fire chiefs are going to be here to talk about their opinions on continuing to report to the select board versus reporting directly to a town manager if we choose to go that route. And that should pretty much cover it tonight. So, let's get started. You want to just introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name is Mark Haddad. I'm the town manager in Groton. I've been the town manager in Groton since October of 2008. I'm in my 17th year. I've been in municipal government. Excuse me for 1 second.
That's quite all right.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, you love the town stuff. It's all good. It's all good.
I've been in municipal government for 40 years. I've been the first town manager in 2 different towns when they changed the charter. So I've been at the beginning of the implementation, and I've been pretty successful in both of those. I've sat on charter review committees in both Grafton, where I live, and Groton currently. And so I have a wealth of experience in terms of the process and how we went about doing charter changes and how we went about amending charters to meet the needs and tweak them so that you get sort of the best of everything as you live with the document for a little while. And as you live with the document, you notice things and you want to try to make that better. That's why most charters have a review period after 10 years, so that people will come in, take a look at it, and decide if any changes have to happen. So I would suggest if you're doing that, I'm sure you're going to have a section in there that will require an automatic charter review as you go down through the pipe. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, talk about the process, talk about the town manager, appointing authority, and how that all works. Be happy to answer anything that you have.
So, why don't you start?
I have a bunch of questions, but I want everyone to participate. As far as your position goes, and as far as elected boards and appointed boards, how many elected boards do you have that are completely separate? And how many boards do you actually appoint?
Okay, I appoint the Historical Commission, the Historical Commission, the Historic District Commission, and then I'm the nominating authority on about 12 or 13 other boards in which I make a nomination to the select board, and then they make the formal appointment. But they can't appoint unless I make the nomination. So it's sort of, I'm the appointing authority. But we had some semantics that we wanted to do at one point. It's the same difference. We have an elected Board of Health, an elected Planning Board, an elected Board of Assessors, an elected Water Commission, Sewer Commission, Library Trustees, and there's one more that I'm forgetting, Park Commission. The interesting part about that is I appoint their employees. So it gets a little dicey when you have the town manager appointing the employees and you have an elected board that has separate statutory authority. So that gets a little bit difficult sometimes, but it works. At the end of the day, it works fine. For example, I appoint the town planner, there's an elected planning board. I appoint the principal assessor, there's an elected board of assessors. I appoint the health, anything having to do with the health department, we have an elected board of health. And the Conservation Commission is appointed by the select board, but I appoint the Conservation Minister.
Who approves all those?
All of my appointments have to be ratified by the select board.
So not the commission?
Correct, the select board. So the way the charter is written in Groton is I am the appointing authority, and any appointment that I make has to be ratified by a majority of the select board.
So do you routinely have a collection of people to assist you with your nomination process?
Yeah, so when I do a nomination for a committee, I ask the committee to give me a recommendation, and I bring that forward. I let them do the search, let them figure out who they want to have on their committee, and I bring that to the select board. When I appoint a department head, for example, the town planner, I will put a member of the planning board on my search committee, along with a member of the select board, so that there's input from that board. And then usually what I do is I narrow it down to a couple of finalists, and I send it off to that board, and I allow them to interview the finalists and then make a recommendation to me. Sometimes I accept their recommendation, sometimes I don't.
And does that group that is doing the interviews, does that just consist of their board or committee? Or does it have an expanded audience, like, say, HR director or somebody like that?
Yeah, so what I usually have between 5 and 7 people on my search committees, always the HR director. I usually put another department head, so for example, if I'm gonna do the principal assessor, I'll have the town accountant and the town treasurer, along with a member of the Board of Assessors on that search committee, because you want to get a wide variety of input as you're making that decision.
Is that the way you did it your second time serving as TM?
No, I've always done it that way from the start. The more input you have, it's a better process, so that when you bring it to the select board, you have a buy-in from the elected board going to the select board, because the last thing you ever want to have happen is bring an appointment to the select board and have somebody contest it. And I've been very fortunate, I've never had anyone contest the recommendation. Recently, with regards to the Conservation Commission, I had 2 finalists. They recommended the other person, and I went with somebody different. Ended up being, I don't want to sound conceited, but ended up being the right decision at the end of the day. You know, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to get, you want to try to get as much input into it, but at the end of the day, the town manager has to make the final call. But he wants to get, you want a town manager that gets as much input as possible. Now, the 2 exceptions in Groton is the police chief and the fire chief. Both of those chiefs are strong chiefs under the statute, and under that statute, the select board is the appointing authority, unless you have a charter that amends that. In Groton, the way that it works, and it's kind of, we're trying to correct that right now, is the town manager does the search, and he brings 2 candidates to the select board, and the select board pick one of those 2 candidates for the police chief and fire chief and town clerk. There's an amendment before the town meeting to change that, to just make the town manager the appointing authority. The chiefs will still say strong chiefs, but it will be the town manager making the appointment, subject to ratification by the select board. But regardless of that fact, the way that it works is the town manager is the day-to-day supervisor of the police chief and the fire chief. And he does their reviews and makes recommendations to the select board on whether or not they should get a raise or not. So the police chief and the fire chief in Groton report to the town manager on a day-to-day basis, but the select board is the appointing authority. It's kind of a weird system, but it's worked for many years. We're trying to change it though.
What's that? And so just talk about that a little bit more, and not, because I'm still trying to digest all that.
Yeah.
And it was that way, it was designed that way, or that's kind of how
It was
it's
designed
evolved that way?
When the charter was established by, that was before I got there, when the charter was established by the Charter Review Committee, they wanted both the police chief and the fire chief to be strong chiefs, which I agree with 100%.
But, okay, so strong can mean a lot of different things. So it means obviously they're hiring all their own staff and doing all that.
Well, it's interesting. The
Okay.
fire chief lobby has a better lobby than the police chief lobby. The fire chief, as a strong chief, is the full appointing authority, hiring, firing, disciplinary, promotional, everything within the fire department.
Okay.
Within the police department, the town manager appoints all the police officers and does all the promotions, even though he's a strong chief.
We never got it straight, we were trying to
Oh, I
figure
think
that out.
we did. I think we got an incorrect answer.
Yeah, that's
That's
what I mean.
the statute under the
That's
strong
fascinating.
chief, under the strong police chief, the statute gives the police chief the right to set policy within the department.
Mhm.
But the town manager is still the appoint, or if you don't have the town manager, the
Right.
select board
Right.
is still the appointing authority, even under the strong chief statute. Not the case with the fire chief. Fire chief is the man when it comes to strong chief.
Hold on.
Oh, woman, I'm sorry. I just don't steal sitting right there.
Is the town manager role considered a strong town manager?
Yeah, because in Groton, because the town manager is the appointing authority.
Right.
That's where you get
Right.
the title.
And that was a
strong town
change
manager.
from the charter committee?
What happened, in Groton, they didn't have a town administrator or a town manager. They had a position called chief administrative officer, and that position had no authority whatsoever. All the select board made most of the appointments, but the planning board appointed the town planner, the conservation commission appointed the conservation administrator, the council on aging appointed the council, and it was just a very fractured way, because there was no central part of government, and everybody was reporting all over the place. And you can't, it doesn't work well. You have to have a center point of contact and somebody responsible, in my opinion, for the day-to-day operation of the town. And the town manager is ultimately responsible to the select board. So if the town manager fails, that's the town manager's fault.
Yeah, so maybe on that point, you mentioned that you were part of in two places where we've switched over to this kind of system. So I guess, what is your biggest takeaway in terms of the benefits of moving to a stronger town manager, in terms of governance or operations? What are the pros and cons that you've seen?
Operationally, it's much more efficient because you have somebody that's responsible for all of the employees, everything that goes on in the day-to-day operation. And I think it makes a more efficient operation. If somebody wants information, they have one person to go to. When you have different boards appointing different positions, it gets fractured and nobody knows who's responsible. So say you have a rogue town planner, but the planning board loves it, but everybody else doesn't like it. There's no way to control that particular position. So by having a strong town manager, you have a central point of contact, and that person is ultimately responsible for the day-to-day operations of the community. And residents of the community know who to go to when they want to deal with something like that. And to me, that's very, very important. And I'm a strong advocate and strong town manager form of government.
You're also a full-time employee who's around, and as opposed to a
All
lot of
day long,
part-time
absolutely.
department.
People know who to go to. Now, the downfall, to answer, she had one, I'm sorry, Joe, one last follow-up to her question. The downfall is some people have a perception that the town manager is way too powerful and nothing happens without the town manager doing that. I've been accused of that, and I'm sure whoever other town managers have been accused of that in any town you go to. That's just the nature of the operation. But it still works by having that one person in charge of the day-to-day operations of the town. Even the police chief and fire chief, who are appointed by the select board, under our charter, they report to the town manager on a day-to-day basis. And that works, I think.
How much,
I just want to go
go
back.
ahead.
You've given us so much information
I'm
already.
sorry.
No, it's
Great.
great. This is awesome.
I want to go back in the process. I'll go way back when you were first talking about setting up the search committees to hire somebody.
Yeah.
Is that in the charter, or is that something that you designed?
I designed that, and the select board adopted that as a policy. And it makes sense to do that. So the charter, the one thing that town council, I don't know if, has town council come in and spoken to you about the charter? You should definitely meet with town council to talk about the process. But the one thing that town council advises is don't make the charter too specific. Because if you have it too specific, you can never change it without going back to town meeting, the legislature, or a ballot, depending on which process you follow. So you want the charter to set the format, and then you want either policies or bylaws to implement what you have within the charter. So, the charter in Groton says the town manager is the appointing authority. I implemented a process that says, okay, when I do a hiring, I am going to set up a search committee made up of a member of the select board, a member of the, if it's an elected board, a member of that elected board, and then department heads that relate specifically to that particular position. And then I bring that forward, and then I do my search, and then I bring finalists to both the department heads, because to me, fit's the most important thing. I want to make sure the fit of the employee is good, so I have the department heads interview the finalists as well, and then I have that board or committee interview, take a recommendation, and then bring that to the select board for ratification. And because of that, the select board has never rejected one of my appointments. There's always a first time, though.
Do you have town electric and water?
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about the relationship of, could you tell me about the construct of your electric department and how it's incorporated and resides? And
The electric, Littleton's water and electric department is different than Groton's. Groton Electric and Littleton Electric are the same thing. Separate governance, the electric commissioners are in charge, you can't change anything about that. The general manager reports up to the electric commission. The town manager has no control over that whatsoever. And that's the way it is, I think, in every other community. Within Groton, we have an elected water commission, but the town manager appoints all the employees within the water department. So it works the same way as the planning board and the assessors. I appoint the water superintendent, he reports to me, and I appoint all of his employees. That seems to work pretty well. The electric department, that's a lot different, because that's a separate set of laws, and it's a separate way that it works, so I wouldn't mess around with the electric light department. Just my opinion.
It's a little more difficult for us because the electric department and the water department are so integrated. in Littleton.
that way for
as
years
you
and years and
remember,
years, yeah.
and it's no different now. Joe is on the board, and he runs for both the Water Commission and Electric at the same time. And they oversee that whole operation.
Has there ever been a case where they elected a different water commissioner than an electric commissioner?
We just talked about this last meeting. No, it hasn't happened yet, but
It could happen.
it could, at the last election, we had someone who was gonna run just for the electric board, had no interest in the water at all. As it turned out, the person did not run, but that was gonna be, I think, the first time it ever happened. We've been lucky so far, it's been,
Because that'll be a real problem if that happens, right?
well, that's one of the things that this committee has talked about, the Collins Center has talked about, and one of the things that we'll be considering is that have one election for both things, so that doesn't happen, you don't get caught in that situation, because we are so integrated anyway, so it might as we,
Might as well make it one, if you're gonna do it, it should be Littleton Water and Electric as the same entity.
Yep.
And not have it separate. Because, yeah, you've been lucky for 40 years that it's never happened. Because I always wondered about that when I was here. I think people were afraid of Kurt, so nobody would run for, don't quote me on that, sorry.
You're on TV.
Oh, I'm kidding, Kurt.
Question, checks and balances with regard to a strong town manager, if you could address that, as well as address how you as the town manager with this one-stop, authority interact with the select board, and how, whether there's any concern with regard to your, informing them of what you want to inform them and not informing them about other matters.
The select board, everybody still has to remember, regardless of the town manager, the select board is still the chief elected policy-setting board in town, and I'm sure when you write your charter, the Groton Charter specifically says the select board sets policy. Town manager is the chief administrative officer of the town, reports to the select board. That relationship is very important. You've got to have a town manager that works and keeps the select board informed of everything that's going on day to day. So there's usually nothing. Very rarely have I forgotten to tell the select board something where they're surprised at a meeting. Not perfect, sometimes it happens, but the select board they have to have faith in the town manager that the town manager is going to keep them informed.
So do you provide them with a written document?
Every week, in every meeting, they get a weekly report from me on exactly what's happening within their office.
And how many pages does that?
It depends on the issue. Sometimes it can be 7 pages, sometimes it can be 2 pages.
I'm just trying to convey.
Yeah, it depends on what's coming up on that particular, for example, my town manager's report for our meeting coming up on the 25th is 5 pages, because there's a lot of information in there for them, this particular meeting.
We've had input with regard to town clerk asserting the need for election independence and not being appointed. Can you address that aspect of transition in your two experiences?
Yep.
And maybe expand that to be, did you have extensive experience with regard to previously elected and then transitioning to, if you could address
Yeah,
those
both
topics.
Grafton and in Groton, I push for appointed town clerks. I think it's important. The town clerk has mass general laws that it has to comply with. You can't, there's no undue influence on a town clerk by the appointing authority. It has to be a separately elected board. I don't buy that argument. I don't trust that argument. There's no accountability to an elected town clerk as far as I'm concerned. In the town of Grafton, where I live, during an election, the town clerk lost 200 ballots that didn't get counted. Right? 200 ballots were lost, and all of a sudden they turned up the day after everything was counted, and they had to do a whole separate count and everything else. To me, there was no recourse by the select board or the town administrator to do anything to the town clerk. Hey, I'm elected, you can't touch me, other than going through a very costly and expensive recall. To me, there has to be some sort of accountability so that there are goals, there are standards, there are performance evaluations, there are reviews to make sure that the town clerk is accountable to somebody. Not that the voters, the select board is accountable, the select board are accountable to the voters. I don't know why the town clerk has to be. It's an administrative position. It doesn't set policy. To me, elected boards, planning board should be an elected board. They set policy. Select board, elected board, they set policy. Board of Health, elected board, they set policy. Town clerk doesn't set policy. The town clerk administers mass general laws. Very specific guidelines that the town clerk has to follow. Why that needs to be elected is beyond me. So in Grafton, we changed from elected to appointed, and in Groton, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, we changed from elected to appointed, and it's worked great. We had a great town clerk who just abandoned me, decided she wanted to be the town administrator in Harvard, the assistant town administrator in Harvard, so, but she was a phenomenal town clerk. She was the first appointed town clerk, and she did a great job. And as a matter of fact, people who were worried about it saw the job that she did and said, okay, this is the way it goes. And I just hired a new town clerk who's starting soon. I think she's gonna be just as good. So to me, you go through a vetting process to make sure the right person is in that job.
Are you gonna ask about this? 'Cause I have a couple
This
follow-
specific
Okay, yes.
topic. So when you're dealing with transitions like that, from an elected town clerk to an appointed, were there like phased elements in the charter where it said, you know, after the term expires, or,
Yeah.
because that's one of the things.
The way we did it is, you don't want to undo an election. You can undo an election through legislation, but you don't want to. So the way that we did it is, the town clerk, he stayed in his position unless one of two things happened. His term ended, or he decided to resign or retire earlier. So in our particular case, our town clerk wanted to retire. I begged him to stay for another, you know Mike Bouchard. I begged him to stay for a couple more years, and he did. But then he resigned once we found a town clerk to replace him, and it worked beautifully. It was a beautiful transition on how it all happened.
So is your new town clerk a resident? So if they're appointed, they don't have to be a
They
resident?
don't have to be a
it's
resident. They don't have to be a resident. And so our first appointed town clerk lived in Townsend. And then our new town clerk lives in Shutesbury now, but she's gonna relocate to this area. I don't know if she can live in Groton or not, but she doesn't have to.
Right, so that's another,
Another advantage, because you have a wider pool of
Wider
people,
pool.
and it's not a popularity contest to see who gets elected. There's been history, and I'm not gonna name names in Groton, but there was history where the elected town clerk was doing things that she shouldn't have been doing. And they ended up she ended up resigning but she didn't have to if she didn't want to. You would have had to go through a costly recall election. to
now
have
in
that
Groton,
happen.
though, the clerk reports to the select board, though, not you, is that correct?
No, see, that's the interesting thing, the way we wrote the bylaw and the way that it passed town meeting. Again, like the police chief and the fire chief, the town manager gives two names to the select board, and then the select board picks one of those two, but the contract and the supervision and the day-to-day is with the town manager. Makes no sense. We're trying to correct that with a charter amendment. But the select board appoints the town clerk, and the town clerk reports day-to-day to the town manager. That's the way the law was passed.
Mark, what part of it doesn't make, what,
You should have the town manager be the appointing authority if he's gonna be the supervisor. And I think that's the same thing with the police chief and the fire chief. Even if they're strong, I think the town manager should be the appointing authority. Because the town manager in Groton, the police chief and the fire chief, day-to-day operationally report to the town manager. The town manager does their performance reviews. So it just doesn't make sense to do it, not have the town manager as the appointing authority, in my opinion.
So how do you receive input other than your own with regard to all the different department heads that report to you, including the strong police chief, the
Yep.
strong fire chief?
With regards to the boards that have, like the town planner, I'll take input from the planning board, input from the water commission, input from the assessors, input from the council on aging when I do those performance reviews. When it comes to the police chief and the fire chief, that's me working with them, doing their review, like I would with another employee, like the human resources director or the building commissioner. They don't have any boards that report to them, it's up to the town manager to supervise them.
And is that your practice, and did that practice become a policy that was embraced by the select board, or is that strictly all about you?
No, the charter requires input from those boards and committees that have, the charter says for department heads who have a board, they have to participate in the performance review. It's in the charter.
Performance reviews.
He has to take input.
Or they have to have an option. I think I remember around here, sometimes they give them an option, a lot of times they don't hear anything back.
No, they don't have to,
Okay, they
but
have an
I have to
option.
seek it.
Okay, right,
I don't always get input.
okay.
What elements of the charter do you think were be the most challenging for the kind of general public to get on board with or wrap their heads around?
I'll give you an interesting story. I'll give you an interesting story. So when
I bet you have more than one.
I got this is one that's kind of funny. So we had a cable review, a cable advisory committee. And when I became the town manager, one of the things that I'm responsible for is contracts up to the select board. Select board ultimately signs it, but it's the town manager's job to negotiate those contracts and bring it up. So prior to the town manager, the cable advisory committee did the contracts with Charter and Verizon and whoever else the cable providers were. So here I am, 2008, I come in, Mickey the Dunce, hey, time to do I think the Verizon contract was up. I went and met with the cable advisory committee and said, hey, listen, I'm ready to start this process. I'd love a couple of you to work with me on the review. You would have thought I shot the Pope at that point, because that was a very interesting time. We worked it out, but there are growing pains. I guess to answer your question, there are growing pains. You know, you have a board, a committee that's the appointing authority of a department head, and all of a sudden they're no longer that appointing authority. It's culture shock. Some embraced it, some do not. So one of the things that I did when I first came to Groton is I got on the agenda of every board or committee in town. And I went to every single meeting, introduced myself and say, I want to work with you. Let's try to, what do you need from me? What can I do to help? And some of that worked well. Some of it was still, people were nervous. Who is this guy coming in here? You know what I mean? So there's going to be growing pains. I go to a strong town manager form of government. There's going to be growing pains. Now, in Groton, the previous person left. And so there was brand new town manager coming in. So there was no loyalty, there were no issues there. In Ayer, when they went to a strong town manager, the town administrator became the town manager. So that worked. Same thing in Tingsboro. That worked in Tingsboro, where the current town administrator became the town manager. So sometimes it works, sometimes you have a new person coming in. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if you decide to do that here. Because I would assume that the town administrator would, if the select board is happy, would move up to town manager, but it doesn't always work that way.
Go ahead. Sorry, you mentioned earlier that it was much more efficient operationally. Can you put like some numbers to that in terms of, do you feel like it's financially more efficient? Is it time more efficient? You actually have more time, you can do more as a town? Like trying to weigh up, like what is the actual benefit?
I'll give you two answers to that. Budget wise, having a strong town manager in charge of setting the budget, much more efficient, better financial planning. When I became the town manager in Groton, they had an A1 rating, and it was very fractured the way the budget was done. The finance committee was ultimately responsible. The select board had a very minimal role in it, and people would just throw in numbers at the finance committee, and then they would try to put a budget together. The town manager under the charter, one of the main impetuses of creating the town manager was because of the budget. So the town manager came in, and he was ultimately, he or she's responsible for putting the operating budget together. So all the boards and committees, even the boards that don't report to the town manager, like the library trustees, they still have to go through the town manager for the budget. So the town manager puts that budget together, and it's much more efficient. You have better information, you have better planning, because now you can put 3- and 5-year financial plans together, outlooks. And so, we went from an A1 bond in the community to a AAA bond in the community over the course of my first 5 years there, because we had better financial policies, better planning. Budget-wise, to answer your question, is probably the best reason to have a strong town manager, because he's responsible to the finance committee to develop that budget. And the select board plays a more important role in the process, because now the town manager not only is providing the budget to the finance committee, he's also providing it to the select board. And it's one budget that's balanced, it's given to the select board and the finance committee at the same time for their decisions. So that process works beautifully, and I encourage you, if you do anything, put the budget control under the town manager, reporting to the finance committee. To me, that's very, very important. The second thing, where time and efficiency, when I became the town manager in Groton, I had come in and I had heard that I don't know if you ever travel up and down 119, what is that, with the sub shop, not the sub shop, the butcher shop. So the butcher shop came in.
I'm here.
That's right, that's why he's here. Thank you, Steve. So the butcher shop took 18 months to get permitted. 18 months to get permitted. It was ridiculous when I heard that. 18 months to get permitted. So one of the first things under the charter, the town manager has the ability to consolidate departments and provide efficiencies. So one of the first things I did is I created a land use department. And I put the town planner as the land use director, and I had all the permitting boards report to the town planner, so that there was coordination. When a permit came in, you didn't go to the Board of Health, and then when you're done with the Board of Health, go to the Conservation Commission, and when you're done with the Conservation Commission, go to the Planning Board. It's sort of like one-stop shopping. So we have what we call land use committee meetings. So when a developer comes in with a plan, they sit down with all the permitting granting authorities, and they learn what they have to do, so they can simultaneously file. The fire chief, the police chief, the highway, the DPW director, the planning board, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, they're all part of that process, so that it's a very, very efficient process right now, and it works extremely well. You agree with that, Sturgery? Yeah. He's here for backup, I like that.
So did you, in your transitions, and you mentioned the finance role, did you invest with regard to an expenditure necessary at a greater level of compensation and authority with regard to expanding that role of the finance department when you made that transition? That's part one.
So you're saying, did the town, do you pay more?
Did you, because you said you had an A1 rating and you got it to a AAA, I suspect that came with concerted effort.
Yeah.
And potentially, part of that effort is investing with regard to a more professional or someone far more capable, credentialed with regard to financial planning. I'm
Yeah.
not saying it has to be that way, but it might be that way.
Well, we have an assistant finance director also. The town accountant is the assistant finance director. The town manager under the charter is the chief financial officer and the finance director. So you want to hire somebody, in my opinion, that has a strong financial background. That's just who you hire. You're not going to pay that person more than you would.
Need to.
That's who you hire.
Yeah, we have an
Good
open,
job.
we have an open position right now, is why I'm asking of where you slotted that person in. Separate
Yep.
part of the question, because I think Jim Duggan has spoken to this a little bit, is did you find that as you transitioned to strong TM, did you have any separation such that there were new staff or new expenses required to support a strong TM?
Now, as a matter of fact, one of the first things, people were really nervous when the new town manager came in, that people were gonna lose their job and that new people were gonna come in. I would strongly suggest that whoever comes in, you wanna use the staff that you have. I got great staff, and I inherited great staff in Groton. So had a strong town accountant, strong treasurer collector, strong assessor. So as long as those positions are in place, you don't need to worry about hiring other people. You just have to empower those people, because now they have one person that they're reporting to, instead of the assessor is reporting to the Board of Assessors, and then they tell them to do something. And then before I got there, the treasurer was an elected position, and that causes a whole host of problems as well. As long as you have that central point of contact and people report up, and you got the right people in place, it'll work beautifully for you.
So was there a trusting relationship with you with regard to different boards and committees that, let's say they originally started off prior to charters being elected, and you transitioned them to appointed, and how did you work that transition? How did you communicate? How did you present this scenario
Yeah,
of change?
I'll give you another example to answer that question, outside of the finance, because all those positions became appointed, and so the person that was the elected treasurer became the appointed treasurer, so that person stayed in place. The accountant was always appointed, the assessor, the principal assessor was appointed, but now they reported to the town manager because we set up the finance team. But the interesting thing was the Department of Public Works. So when they did the charter back in 2008, the highway surveyor was an elected position. And when the charter committee put the charter together, they wanted to make the highway surveyor appointed. Well, the highway surveyor at the time, still the highway, he's retiring this year after 40 years, extremely popular individual. He stood up on the floor of town meeting and said, I don't want to be appointed, I want to be elected, and they pulled that out of the charter, and they left him as an elected position. So when I came in as the town manager, the select board set up this assessment center, and what was supposed to be real life circumstances. So I came in and I sat down, and one of the exercises that we went through was this elected highway surveyor that was belligerent. And I had to show how would I work with this belligerent guy who says, you're not gonna tell me what to do. And so I think that got me the job because I was really good at calming this person down. But I'm thinking to myself, I can't wait to meet this highway surveyor, this is gonna be a nightmare. So my first day in the office, I'll never forget this, October 21st, 2008, the highway surveyor came in, first time I met him. And he goes, let's go for a ride. So him and I jumped into his truck, and we drove around the town for like 3 hours, just talking and going over things. And when we came back to the town hall, he says, okay, I'm ready to be appointed by you. I just needed to know who that person was gonna be. So the first thing we did is we created a Department of Public Works. And that person became the appointed Department of Public Works Director. And we took all of the DPW functions, the transfer station, maintenance, and there was one other division we put under there, under the Department of Public Works, and he became the first appointed Department of Public Works Director. So it was kind of an interesting thing because he wanted no part of it, but once he understood how it would work, and he's retiring now after 40 years.
Did you have any other transitional sort of godfathered incumbents that retained their positions, except for that one who then transitioned through, sounds like, your interaction with him?
Yeah, no, that was it. That was the big one, and that was really interesting because I played him the tape, and I go, this is what the guy, because they recorded it, and I go, this is how they portrayed you. It was actually very funny. You had to be there. Sorry, inside, you know Tom Delaney.
Mark, do you have one annual meeting or two?
We have two. Fall, spring and fall, it's in the charter, and they're both annual meetings, no quorum requirements. And that works really, really well. We typically do the budget in the spring town meeting, the spring annual town meeting. The fall annual town meeting we use for zoning amendments sometimes, although over 17 years that I've been there, they've sort of blended because we use the fall town meeting to balance the budget if anything happens between the time we set it before we set the tax rate in November. So you can use it either way, but it can be done both. It can be done both.
Do you have a deputy moderator?
The moderator appoints the deputy moderator at the beginning of town meeting. So the moderator is elected, and then at the beginning of town meeting, the moderator appoints a deputy for 1 year, and then he becomes a deputy moderator for the year.
What do they do, the deputy?
In Groton, because one of the first things I did, Tim, this would probably help you, is I changed the stipend, because I think the moderator does a lot of work. And that's a very important job, in my opinion. So the moderator was making $30 or $50 or $60 or something ridiculous. So I bumped it up to $1,000 in the budget. And so.
You had an extension.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, actually, yeah,
So I
actually,
bumped it up to 1,000, and because of that, the moderator does not like overseeing that vote when they vote that. So he steps down, and the deputy moderator steps in and takes that vote. So
Has the deputy moderator ever had to run a town meeting?
we've been very lucky where our moderator's always there, but the deputy moderator will do an article from time to time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How do you receive, as strong TM, input from one resident or a group of residents? And similarly, expand on that with regard to how the select board receives input or other boards and committees with regard to open, public meeting law that doesn't require them to receive public input. So I'm curious about all the entanglements.
Yeah, people know that they can come talk to me when they have an issue. Some people are a little intimidated by that. And I'm not always going to agree that there's a problem, so that causes a little bit of friction sometimes. It's not going to be perfect all the time, and that's where you get the reputation, oh, he's too powerful, he's not going to listen. But as long as the town manager entertains the information and sits down with that resident and talks to them, Very rarely have they gone to the select board during public comment period to file a formal complaint. So it's just a matter of how you interact with the residents.
Changing the subject. Do you have a cemetery commission? Is it? No.
No, we don't have a town cemetery. The
You don't?
cemetery in Groton is private. The Groton Cemetery, it's a separate group that runs the cemetery, it has no affiliation with the town. It's called the Groton Cemetery, has no affiliation with the town. But I would imagine if you're going to have a cemetery, town cemetery, you probably want that under the Department, if you're structuring the Department of Public Works, you probably want to put it there. In Grafton, where I work, the cemetery superintendent reports to the Public Works Director.
Yeah, but does it, the cemetery superintendent, is his primary role just the cemetery?
Yes.
And do they have a commission that helps him out? Is there any?
Not in Grafton. In other towns I've seen where you have a separate cemetery commission. Because, you have all that perpetual care money and things like that, so you want to have a separate, sometimes you want to have that separate board, but, sometimes that's what your town accountant is for, to manage those funds.
That's one question was asked to me by a cemetery commissioner, was that if something like this happened, they were concerned about those funds.
You can still have, like, for example, one of the things that happened in Groton, the library trustees were really worried. They have all these trust funds and all these perpetual things that they have, and the trustees wanted to maintain control over that, which they do. So they're a separately elected board. The town manager has no control over them whatsoever, other than the budget. And you'd be surprised how much influence you have when you control the budget. Forces you to work cooperatively.
So in Groton, then the library director is hired
By the library trustees.
by the library, okay, so not by the.
Not by
okay.
the town, does not report to the town manager, totally separate.
Okay, it's just the budget, that's where you do it.
That's where I have my control.
I'm just ask one more budget question while you're on that, because I was gonna ask about FinCom. When you have a very strong town manager and the budget's all going through there, what is the role of FinCom?
FinCom in Groton is very strong. It is the finance committee's budget that goes to town meeting, not the town manager's. So the town manager puts the initial budget together and delivers it to the finance committee. The budget that goes to town meeting is not the select boards or the town managers, but it is the finance committees. However, under the charter, the town manager and the select board and/or the select board have the right of first amendments to the budget if they so choose. Fortunately, we're always in 100% agreement with the budget that goes, but that's the check and balance. But the town manager puts together the proposed budget, goes to the finance committee, the finance committee decides what budget goes to town meeting. Where that gets interesting is if there's a need for an override. Because whilst the finance committee's budget, only the select board can ask for an override. So there's a lot of, you have to have a lot of cooperation and a lot of work. You've got to work together. It's got to be a team effort. You can't have rogue boards. You have to all work as a team. So last year, the select board and the finance committee worked really well together, even though the override lost. They still were unified in what the finance committee supported a budget contingent on an override. So they brought two budgets to town meeting, a balanced budget and an override budget. And that works really, really well. So you have to have a lot of cooperation. I think the finance committee should be, even with a strong town manager, the finance committee is the eyes and ears. They're the ones watching. They should be in control of the budget that goes to town meeting, in my opinion.
Somebody in the audience is really paying attention.
No,
Can I jump in with a question?
Yeah.
Unless anyone else.
That was my question.
that was your question?
I heard you mention two things. One, that you wanted to change a reporting relationship that was in the charter, and then secondly, that someone stood up at town meeting and made a comment, and then that section was pulled. From your experience and what you've seen, what are kind of some lessons learned about structuring the charter? Like, where are you finding pain points, or what gets sort of
The
undone?
biggest growing pain that you're gonna have is people saying that you're putting too much power into one position. So that's gonna be the growing pain, but once it's done and it's implemented, it works really, really well. As long as you have a select board that, you gotta hire the right person to be the town manager, and the select board is still the chief policy setting board in town. They're still in charge of the town manager. So you gotta, I'm gonna tell you, and I said this, I don't know who I said this to before, no matter what you bring to town meeting, somebody's gonna have a problem with what you're presenting. But at the end of the day, if you give your best effort, I think that's what the residents will expect. It's not gonna, you're not gonna have perfect, that's why you do a charter review every 10 years, because there are growing pains. For example, one of the dumbest things that we have in our charter, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, no, one of the things that is a little confusing is that the town manager is the chief financial officer of the town, and he's the finance director. He should sign the bill and payroll warrants. It's ridiculous to have the select board sign that. So the charter came up with this great idea where the select board can do it, but they can give it to the town manager every 30 days with one select. So every 30 days on our agenda, the select board is voting to authorize the town manager and one member to sign the warrant. We're gonna fix that and put it in as a permanent thing. So, but people feel, oh, wait a minute, you can't have the town manager signing the warrants because he's gonna be able to work with this and that. You got a town accountant, a treasurer, there's so many checks and balances, it's just, you gotta just have the town manager sign the warrants, please. That's my one request.
Exactly.
So how do you, go ahead.
No, I just said thank you.
All right, Tim? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on the town meeting business. I know we went round and round on it as well. I think the consultants pointed out that Groton was one of a handful of towns that had 2 town meetings per year. I believe what they have is one annual town meeting, which has to happen between February and June by statutes and the general laws.
Correct.
And you have a mandated fall special town meeting.
Well, no, it's, in Groton, it's not called a special, it's called the annual town
Well,
meeting.
you can't have 2 annual town meetings.
State law, you gotta remember, the charter is a state law. So the charter is adopted by the legislature as a state
Yeah.
law. So we comply with the annual town meeting to set the budget in the spring.
Right.
And then we also have another annual town meeting in the fall.
Yeah, well, I don't agree, but
Okay.
we've always had that here. Voluntarily, the select boards call a special town meeting in the fall for budget adjustments or what have you, and this group would like to make that mandatory. I don't, it doesn't matter if I work one night a year or 2.
Yeah, to me,
But,
it makes sense to have the 2 town meetings.
But I was going to ask you about the warrant for that. You can end up, having to have a fall town meeting when you maybe don't need one. Unless you're going to do zoning things only in the fall, unless you're going to balance things around like that. Because, there are times when you don't have a lot. For a future warrant, the board might say, hey, we don't need a special town meeting, that can wait till the spring.
Yeah.
To me, that takes that
In
away from the
17
board.
In my 17 years in Groton, we've always had robust fall town meetings. Maybe that's just Groton. But there's never been a time where nobody wants to have a town meeting in the fall. We've always had that.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, we've had some kind of thin warrants too. I'm just saying it kind of ties the
25
board's
articles.
hands that they've got to have a town meeting.
We average 25 articles in the fall.
There's also the semantic of, because we can say you have to have 2 meetings, but we don't have to say that the fall one, call it an annual meeting, that has some
I think that's,
logistical or some legal chain differences. And
Well,
so
the
when
reason we
you come
do
in
it
on
that way is because our charter does not have a quorum requirement at the annual town meeting, so that automatically makes the fall and the spring, the 2 annual town meetings, no quorum requirement. Special town meetings, 2% of registered voters.
In Groton.
In Groton.
yeah, we had no quorum requirement.
Right. Okay, but that's why you did it, was for the
Yeah.
quorum. Interesting. Even though you could have just changed that in the charter anyway, right?
Yeah, well, we tried to eliminate the special town meeting quorum requirement, that lost overwhelmingly, so
Okay,
who knows?
interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
When you were in Cohasset,
Yes.
was that a strong town manager position? How did it vary substantially?
From where I am now?
Yeah,
I had full appointing authority, a police chief and fire chief, subject to ratification by the select board, and I signed the warrants. Those were the 2 major changes. Everything else is the same.
Joe?
On the town charter, you said there's a 10-year review. In the meantime, during that 10 years, in the 6th year, if you find something is drastically missing, wrong, or not working, do you have the opportunity to go back and change that one thing?
We did the town clerk off-cycle.
That was off cycle?
Yeah, that's a major change. And we did the DPW off-cycle.
So do you have to go to the state, is it?
There's 2 ways to do it. There's 2 ways to do it, Chairman, I'm sure it was explained to you. It's the special legislation, where you have a town meeting vote, majority vote at town meeting, and then the legislature, governor signs, or you do the 2/3 vote at town meeting to the ballot. Majority vote on the ballot. So you have those two different ways to do it. Groton has always done it, other than the original charter, which was the original setup. They've always done it, special legislation to the legislature. They haven't done the 2/3 vote at town meeting and then the ballot. They've never done it that way. Grafton, where I live, that's the way they do it.
But to do that, you have to hold a special election, don't you?
You could, or it's at the annual, so sometimes what happens is you have to wait a
Okay.
long time. So say you do it in the fall, and then you just have to wait until the following spring until that takes place. When we did the town clerk change, they wanted they did it. We had a belt and suspenders vote on the town clerk. We did the special legislation, and we also did the ballot vote. So we did it both ways. It's kind of interesting. Both passed easily, but it was really interesting.
Go ahead.
Yeah, in regards to the police chief and fire chief, so you said you had full appointing authority. In Groton, you provide 2 nominations in the select board,
Picks one of them.
but you're looking to get that changed.
Yes.
What problems do you have with the process in Groton that it needs to be changed?
I'll give you an example. When you're going through a search, you have a candidate that you, as the manager, you know that's the person. And sometimes you have to bring in a second candidate because the charter required it. When Steele left, we had a great deputy chief who should be the fire chief. But the charter didn't allow that to happen. Didn't allow an interim appointment, so we went without a head of the fire department for 3 months, which was a problem. And I had to go through a search, and everybody knew that the deputy was gonna be appointed fire chief. And now I had to bring a second candidate because that's what the charter called for. It was a colossal waste of that second candidate's time, in my opinion, because Art Cheeks was the man who should have been the fire chief. And we had to go through this search. We just did the town clerk search. I had to bring 2 candidates to the select board. One candidate was head and shoulders above, and there was no doubt that this person was gonna be appointed town clerk. But I had to bring a second candidate who was good, qualified, could have done the job if the select board decided to do that, but it was very obvious that one person was the right person. And under the law, you have to have a town clerk or you can't issue death and marriage licenses. So right now, don't die in Groton because you're not gonna get a death certificate until the new town clerk starts. So by having the town manager as the appointing authority, he can appoint an acting fire chief, an acting police chief, and it also allows for succession planning. So for example, our police chief, when he decides to retire, we have a very strong deputy police chief, who should be the police chief. She's been groomed for it, she's been there for 20 years, or 15 years. She would be perfect to be, but under the charter, the way it is now, I would have to go through a costly search to bring 2 names to the select board. It doesn't make sense. Town manager should be the appointing authority.
Thank you.
And the select board would have to ratify that appointment. That's my opinion. It doesn't matter if it's a strong chief or a weak chief or whatever. The town manager still should be the appointing authority. When the fire chief takes over as a strong chief, he's the strong chief. Doesn't matter who appoints him, still the strong chief.
What if the select board disagreed with you that this number 2 was the successor? Would you, what if there was disagreement about that?
We have a policy that, we put a policy to answer, that's a great question, Kevin. We put a policy in place where the select board, the town manager has to work with the select board on that process. And if the select board says to the town manager, do a full search, town manager has to do a full search. So that's why, don't put that in the charter, but policy. And again, the select board is the chief policy setting board. I wonder how much trouble I'm gonna get into for some of the things I do. You're not gonna save this tape,
I
are you?
appreciate your frankness and all this. I was
It's
thinking the
only
same thing.
public
I do
record.
appreciate
My
your
problem is I say what's on my, still will tell you, I say what's on my mind.
I'm
Sometimes it
sure
gets me in
everybody
trouble.
already knows that, Brian, I'm sure, so.
Thank you.
Oh, well, just a point of clarification. Is it the fact you're bringing 2 candidates, which is in the charter, or is it the bringing of the candidate? If that had said, for instance, bring your best one person, but you still have to go through this kind of ratification process,
That's
would
perfect.
that count?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would still...
100%.
Okay.
But, for example, back to the fire chief thing, when Art was ready to go, we wanted to appoint Art as the acting chief during the interim. charter didn't even allow us to do that, because the charter was specifically 2 names to the select board, and that caused a couple of problems, and, you know, Steele and I were ready to, we talked to Art and said, you're gonna be the acting chief, and all of a sudden, town council said, nope. So we had to have a very difficult conversation at the time. It wasn't fair to him either. So it should be, if you're gonna have a succession plan, for example, I was able to do this, Tom Delaney, 40 years as the Public Works Director in Groton, phenomenal Public Works Director. So 2 years ago, he said, Mark, I'm gonna retire in November of 26, or November of 25. I'm gonna give you 2 years' notice. So I went to the select board and I said, listen, I wanna do a training program to do a Department of Public Works Director and Training Program. I wanna take one of our existing employees and put them 2 years under Tom Delaney for training, so that when Tom retires, we can slide that person right in. Select board agreed with that. They'd have to agree to that process because they have to ratify the appointment. So I went through an internal search. I had 2 candidates come forward. We did a search, and I appointed one as the DPW Director in Training. So for 2 years, he's worked under Tom Delaney, being trained by him. And when Tom leaves in November, Brian is going to step right into the role. Brian's going to be phenomenal because he's had 2 years in Groton. You can't do that if you have to bring 2 names to the select board.
When you say bring 2 names, do you do a search that starts off with more than 2 people?
Oh, yes, full search.
It's a
you
full
have
search. So you
20 candidates, 30 candidates, search committee.
You
interviews,
bring it down to
assessment
2,
center.
but you still have that assessment center with all the final 5 get to participate?
If I didn't have, for example, if we didn't have a strong deputy police chief, for example, and we needed to go out to do that, we would do a full search, even if it was even if the town manager was the appointing authority. Full search, screening committee, assessment center, appointment process. Absolutely would do that regardless.
Because you kept on saying 2, I just didn't. And
The
this,
charter says 2 qualified candidates.
that you bring back, but you did have the full assessment center and all the applications come in. All right, that's.
I want to create a fictitious example. We have a rogue, strong TM who's really got a department head that they're butting heads, and the department head feels like they're being unjustly managed, supervised. What opportunities does that
That's what the
department?
select board, that's what the select board's for.
And
And
does
that's
the-
why you have to have a strong human resources director.
And so is that in, I could see where a scenario like this may have to be in public, but I could also see a scenario where there might be even the department head that would like to keep things not in full public transparency. So is there opportunities how to deal with
Yeah,
that?
that would be a complaint against either or. That's an executive session thing, so if it came to the select board, we'd have an executive session, unless the employee wanted to do it in public.
Do you have an ability for that, every department head knowing to go to your HR director and speak with them, et cetera, and look for things? How do you,
Yeah,
trying to look for a softer than just a full-blown confrontation?
Yeah, in Groton, our department heads are in a union, so they have union protection or grievance
Yeah,
procedures and
that's-
stuff like that works. There were 3 employees who are not under that, but they have personal service contracts with the town manager that has a grievance process in place for them to appeal. So as long as you have, again, not in the charter, written policies or union protection. So we don't have that issue.
Here, I'm looking at time, so I got a couple of questions I want to ask. So one is, do you have an example, and this isn't supposed to be a job interview, obviously, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of a place where you were going this way, and that's our manager in the town select board saying, no, we want you to do it this way? Do you have an example of that where there really was a disconnect? Just happen to have one.
Yeah.
huh?
You're thinking about the full-time fire department?
I can come up with 6 or 8.
I know. So, one of the things when Steele and I were working together, we saw the writing on the wall that the call department is still vibrant, but wasn't sufficient to meet the needs of the town, that we need to go full-time 24/7. So, the select board was not in favor of that expenditure. So, we put together a committee, and we were able to convince the select board that that was the way to go, and the town meeting ultimately approved it. So, but there were times where I came to the select board, I'm trying to think, there was something recent where I came to the select board with a recommendation and they said no. and I said, okay, you're the bosses, I changed I can't remember, I know it happened, I just can't, for some reason, maybe it's a bad memory, I'm trying to forget it. But if that happens, select board is still the bosses. And at the end of the day, when they vote, the town manager has to carry out their vote. If the town manager doesn't, he's not gonna be the town manager very long. You know what I mean? And you don't want to have that. The town manager is there to recommend, work with the select board are the ultimate decision makers. So you gotta have, I have a very strong, I'm sure you have saw this, I have a very strong personality. But I still work for the select board, and when they say this is the way it is, it's the way that it is. That's the way it has to work.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I think the one person in charge has always been an issue, and in these political times, it's even more of an issue, right? Having one person making all the calls, feeling that way, and is somebody else going to really use their role? So that's there. So the other question I would have is just in terms of, so we're going to go through this process and so on, and you do have to, educate the public and convince the public and give them an opportunity to. What are your recommendations? What have you seen that works and doesn't work on that?
You do public hearings.
Okay.
Definitely have advertised public hearings, have at least 2. The way the Groton Charter is written, you do one at the beginning of the process and one at the end of the process. The first time they did the charter review in Groton, they had 256 recommended changes. Because they're like, that town manager is way too powerful, we need to curb his. They didn't change anything, but people came forward. So I would recommend public hearings, as many as you can have, so that the public has a chance to comment on it. And I will guarantee you, no matter how many public hearings you have, when you're on the floor of town meeting, somebody will say, this is the first I've heard of it, why are we doing this? Be prepared for that, because it's gonna happen. But I would suggest a lot of public outreach and advertise public hearings and make reports at select board meetings, let them know where you are in the process, what you're thinking, get feedback from the select board, because everybody watches the select board. So that's another way to get the word out to the residents as well.
Anybody else? No. Thank you very much.
This was fun. It was nice to see.
One more
It was nice to see old friends.
One more question.
Yep.
Union contracts.
Yep.
The
way our charter is written is the town manager negotiates the contract, subject to ratification by the select board. Select board's they still have to ratify the contract, and then town meeting has to fund the contract. So, but the town manager in Groton negotiates all union contracts. And the way that I do it is I have a sit down with the select board prior to negotiations and say, what are my parameters? What can I negotiate? They give me the direction, and then I carry out the direction. Sometimes I have to go back to the select board and say, I need a little bit of leeway, but that's a give and take part of the negotiation process. But ultimately, the select board have to ratify the contracts.
Oh, I thought of a question I had too. Signing contracts. You sign all contracts? Do you have a
Procurement contracts and things like that, I'm the signing authority. Union contracts, intermunicipal agreements, things like that, that's the select board.
You can sign any contract of any size?
Yeah. Matter of fact, the way that we go to town meeting, for example, we did an $80 million elementary school. I signed the contract. Town meeting said to be expended by the town manager, so that was my contract.
What is the select board's authority
In that particular, they have to sign that, they have to approve the warrants under the old system, but town meeting sets the parameters, and it's up to the town manager to stay within those parameters. I'm happy to say we came in $2.5 million under budget. So, but you gotta have, I know it's scary to have so much control into one person, but if you have the right person in that position, it will become more efficient and it will work. Now, the average stay of a town manager across the country is 3.5 years in a position. That's probably been like that for years and years and years, right? 3.5 years. I was here in Littleton for 9 years. I was in Cohasset for 7 years, and I've been in Groton for coming up on 17 years. So it's just how you work the job. And believe me, I've had bumps in the road. I'm not perfect. Google me, you'll see I'm not perfect, but I've been effective in my tenure. Just have to have the right person in the job.
Yeah, we've not had the right person a couple times recently, so.
And that's up for the select board. You know, the select board got to do a good, strong vetting process when you hire a town manager, I think. I still got through some. I'm joking.
All right, thank you. Thank
It's
you,
great to
thank you,
see all
thank you
of
very much.
I'm gonna go have dinner with my wife right now, so, good luck. I hope
Okay.
everything goes well.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
It's really good to see you. Good to see you. You too. Take care, everyone.
I'll be watching this on recorded. There's so much information he gave us.
Right, so it's good it's recorded, right? So
I
you
want
go
to
back
get a
and look at it
rerun on
again.
that.
Hopefully it was recorded, it was on the screens and now it's gone.
It's on this one.
On this one, yeah, yeah.
This is for the people who
I think
zoom in
that's
and
for
so
us
on,
to
I
see,
think.
yeah.
Yeah. All right,
Can't take notes that way.
everyone, come up front, work to see you.
Hello.
Pretty casually, so we invited you here to, you know what we're up to tell us what you think, and who wants to go first?
If you want to go first, sure, that's fine.
So I have a lot of, this has been rolling around my head for quite a bit, because everybody's been saying town manager, town manager, town manager style. Which I'm just gonna go back to where I started. 7 years now here as chief of police in town Littleton.
7 years already?
Yeah, 7 years. 7 town administrators, 7 finance directors. So, I'm just gonna say that for the baseline. First go around, my first,
Man, haven't even
I
finished
know
that.
I didn't tell you that when I hired you.
One bad day away from leaving. So, a lot of power, he said it himself, a lot of power to one person. I feel that we are strong chiefs, and we run our departments very efficiently and effectively. I think having one person in charge to tell me who I'm going to hire or who I'm not going to hire, that's not in law enforcement or in fire service, kind of says a lot for that one person. Comes down to the appointing like he was talking about, and if it was up to the town manager at the time of my appointment, I would not be here today. I'll say it, Joe.
No, I was going to bring it up. If you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up.
So, came down to an assessment center. Probably the hardest experience of my life was the assessment center. They put you through the ringer back and forth. And
So you want to talk about what the assessment center is?
so the assessment center is basically 5 stages. Resume stage first, you put your resume in. You go in and you sell yourself at first. Then you go through a written portion of it. They give you some assignments to write on. And the second, or the third or fourth part is basically it's how to handle a situation. Like Mark Haddad was just saying, he had one where he had to talk about disgruntled highway super. Mine was a disgruntled parent that thought his daughter was sexually assaulted by a teacher, but it turned out it wasn't even in our town, so there's really not much we could do about it, but we got him in the right direction as to what he needed to do. So it was very hostile, and then there was one that was, there was 4 or 5 different scenarios that I had to play out and see how I'd interact with him. Kind of stressful. There was 6 of us at first, and it came down to 2. And it wasn't until the night of my final interview in front of the board that I found, the week before, I found out that the person I'm going against happens to be the town administrator's cousin. So, that put a lot more pressure on me at that point in time, saying, this is a bad job now I know what's going on. But luckily for me, I was in front of the entire board, which is made up of 5. So, that night, there was a vote taken. I didn't get a 5-0 vote, I was a 3-2 vote. So by 1 vote, I actually made it to be police chief in your town. And very fortunate that I did, and it's been a great experience ever since. So with one person having so much power over police and fire, I think is a very, could be detrimental. I do. I understand by having a town manager style for the different committees and the other ones, but the police department, the police department is very community oriented, and the board is elected by the people, and the people want to tell the chief exactly how the department should be running, how it should be community oriented, and that's going to be relayed from you to the police chief. Whereas it might not be the town manager, who could be from, not have his ties in the community at all. So, or she. But that's why,
But just, I'm glad you brought it up, because I was gonna bring it, I remember sitting over there during 7 years ago, and that whole thing, and finding out who the person was that was sitting next to you was actually related to the town administrator, and if it was the choice of the town administrator, you wouldn't have got a job, so that's why, when he kept on saying he's so in favor of it, I'm saying, I've seen it on the other side, I've seen it, so it hasn't worked, so there is some things that we'll have to think out, but.
Don't you have to say some sort of conflict of interest then in that scenario? Like,
I don't think cousins count. I don't think cousins count under the conflict of interest law.
Oh, but perceived.
Perception
Perceived
should have.
conflict.
Absolutely.
And
I'm not saying it's
comes
the right
back-
thing to do.
Yeah.
But haven't we only been talking about situations where the select board would appoint the police chief, the fire chief, town council? Every draft we've looked at, that's,
Yeah, but we still keep saying, but we need to, but
We need your,
we still needed to have the conversation to understand is that really where we want to go? Because textbook-wise, you can make the strong case, yeah, go to the town manager. I mean, especially if the select board still has to approve it, right?
To Tim's point, I don't think we've had deliberation and discussion. We haven't taken straw votes. I don't think.
But we haven't, because we have no data to do it on.
I'm not
sorry,
criticizing that we
sorry,
haven't. What I'm saying is, I'm feeling like I'm hearing a little bit of we're leaning towards this. I agree that we're leaning towards proposing a charter, but underneath that charter umbrella, I feel we've had very few, if any, deliberations with regard to making consensus amongst us or understand. I don't have a clue of half dozen of you as to how you might be leaning because I haven't heard comments on specific matters. I just want to put that down. I know I speak a lot and often, but I've also held back with regard to presenting a position on many different aspects, awaiting discussions and input from people we need to speak with. I just want to make that known. I feel like we've preordained or tipped our hand with regard to much of anything in this group.
I'm not sure. Go ahead.
So can I follow up on a
Sure, go ahead,
question
Sharon.
with that? So if one were to take sort of the consolidation of power or like nefarious activities off the table, are there any pros in terms of efficiency that you could see with that reporting structure that was described, just to kind of feel you out for like what,
Yeah.
are there any benefits
So
that your department
I
might
see
feel?
what you're saying. I think one of the things that will take it away from efficiency is no matter what, the board has to have approval, especially during a time of crisis, as some kind of incident is going on. I go direct to the chair. There's been many of days where the chair has received text messages on numerous bases, just so the board is aware. But in that text, I'm also including the town administrator. Even though he's my equal right now, he does run the day-to-day operations of the town, so he has to know exactly what's going on as well. So it's always been that way. There was a few bumps in the road, but the day-to-day operations, yes, he's aware of exactly what's going on. We haven't ever had an issue with that. It's always kept that way, but my direct boss is always the board. That makes sense in some way.
But in that scenario, you're not obligated to include him on those texts. You just do it because you know it's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do, it's transparency.
Would there then be some rationale for sort of codifying some of those pieces within a charter that, like, because you could say then otherwise technically a rogue police chief could say I'm not going to even talk to the town administrator or the town manager. So we're trying, I guess some of the things we're grappling with was how can we preserve some of the things that are working well, and do those need to be ratified in policy or in the charter? Are there ways in which we can kind of make sure that the things that are working well continue to work well?
Yeah. I think one of the things you need to do is the town administrator needs to be informed as to what's going on. Not so much as a decision maker as a department, but informed as to what's going on. And yes, I am a strong chief. However, the board does appoint all sworn employees. The civilian employees are hired through me. So I know you had that question earlier, Rob.
Thank
So
you very
yes.
much. I appreciate the clarification because I think we've had
Whereas the fire
various
chief-
answers. And
Exactly.
you've just clarified your understanding, which is consistent with what I heard.
Yes. So all the civilian employees that work for my admin,
I understand.
dispatchers, CRTs, they're all hired by me. However, any sworn personnel that have Chapter 90 power in town, they are the ones that have to go in front of the board and be approved.
I appreciate you making that clear.
And on the fire side, it's the exact opposite. All firefighters are appointed by me.
Procedural.
Any civilian are actually appointed by the town administrator. So
No kidding.
we have completely opposite powers, if you will. What do you guys, chapter 4197A is the law that covers him. For us, it's chapter 48, section 42, and it dictates.
So that's not a Littleton thing, it's Mass General law.
That's Mass General law, yeah.
Even the
So
civilian employees are counted by the town for you, even though you're the stronger in some respects, but.
So, in so many ways, but.
Let's talk.
So, in the Mass General Law, under 4842, the strong fire chief, it's not that it says that I can't appoint the civilian people. It says that these are the ones that you can appoint. Therefore, it's an omission of that specific law that creates this opposite impact.
So how does that work? I mean, are you really appointing them and you say, here, please sign, you approve this one? I mean, basically.
On a firefighter?
Yeah, well, I'm not on the firefighters, on the civilian people.
I mean, I only have
You
one,
already got-
so
you
I
have-
haven't.
okay, so you don't have that many.
Yeah, in 15 years of being a fire chief, I've hired exactly 0 in that position.
Okay, so it's not a big deal on your, in your work realm anyway?
No, it's
Okay.
not, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that's not
It's
a
just-
huge deal.
Yeah,
You know, I think if there's a way to take his chapter 41 powers and make it similar to the fire side through the charter, I think that that is an important thing that the town should be looking at. When it comes to the appointment of the chiefs, I'm also a believer that we should be appointed by the select board. I think when you look at the checks and balances throughout town, I think it's an important piece to ensuring that we're doing what's right for the community and not necessarily reporting back to a single person. Take personalities aside, you know, if it were, I would have no issue working with Mark Haddad or Jim Duggan, but what we don't know is obviously the future and kind of the laugh of before of, there's been a few town administrators through. That can create problems. One of the other hats that I wear is through the Fire Chiefs Association, as one of the board of directors and one of the mentors for fire chiefs in the state. And we continually run into problems of new town manager comes in and, hey, you know what, I don't really like Tim. So we're gonna kind of push him out of the way and now, well, I like Alan, so now I've moved Alan into Tim's spot.
I agree.
Yeah, I figured you would. I was looking for confirming vote there. So I think that there's certain risks that exist there. Now, there are some great town managers in the state that, again, I would say I have no issue whatsoever having them as the appointing authorities. But you don't know necessarily what you're going to get. And when you have these cycles that the charter's going to go through, trying to manage how that's all going to work and be able to look 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road and how everything's going to roll out, I think is a little bit dangerous. I think if you give the board, the select board, the power to create policy that dictates how the hirings occur, I think that's great. You know, right now, I put a lot of effort into succession planning. So someday down the road when I retire, I want to be able to say, hey, you know what? Look no further than right here. So I think through this charter, you give the board the flexibility, and I will agree with what Mr. Haddad said. Groton had a very rigid policy. It was not right, and we saw it in action when it went sideways. So avoid that for sure. In terms of the overall concept of a town manager, I do support the overall concept of a town manager. When I left Littleton and went to Groton, the efficiency that I saw, now we're looking at 2013, 2014, the efficiency difference was absolutely amazing to me, in terms of how quickly we get things done in Groton, how quickly we could fix issues that existed. So I think that there are efficiencies that come out of it. I'm happy to report when I came back to Littleton 10 years later, that gap has been closed quite a bit in that time frame. And I think, I think the board has done a great job kind of saying, hey, we hire professionals to do their job. So it was nice to come back and go, wow, there's not a huge difference now.
So is there no downside though? I mean, so instead of having one manager who's supposedly a professional municipal manager, who's done this other places in time and so on, and now you're reporting to 5 volunteers who may not have any management experience, may not know a whole lot about town, that's a whole nother thing, so, right?
Yeah, I think that so can an elected board create problems? Sure. They absolutely can. But I think the strength of the board is the fact that you have 5 people that are having to agree with, hey, you know what, here's a direction we want to go. They're elected in that position to represent the town and the people of the town. Our position should also be representative of the people in the town, and there's no other, apart from an elected position, which I know, for police and fire chief, the select board really is that representative body that gives us the direction.
You butt heads with the town manager, it's one town manager. You butt heads with one member of the board, but you still have 4 other members that are going to have some reasoning behind it. And, we talked about it this week, last week's Gil and I. It's true, if you butt heads with the town manager and he no longer likes Tim, then he goes with Alan. We're not that way.
But that would be the case for any department head, isn't it?
Not necessarily.
No.
Not one that's so intertwined within the community. Our direction of our job comes from the community and the needs of it.
When Mark said the police lobby or the fire lobby was stronger, what did he mean by that?
Just the way we just talked about the chapter and section.
Yeah, so the strong police chief was developed, and once that was signed into law in Boston, the fire chiefs went, oh, we should probably do something similar. Asked the police chiefs, said, hey, where can we make this better? And that's realistically, that's where it came from, is that the police chiefs went, oh, you want to know where we messed up? Here's where we messed up.
I don't want to.
Yeah. When we met with the select board, it was my understanding that the swearing in at this point was just ceremonial, that the officers really didn't have to be sworn in. They just did it because they don't always done it. Okay.
They have to be appointed by the board, and they have to be sworn in by the town clerk.
Okay.
For the police officers.
So
sorry.
So what's the process before? They don't just show up at the board, because they just say here, and everybody says yes, okay, great. What's the backroom process of that, so the select board knows who's coming? Or do they not really? Do they really just say, hey, police chief said, that's good?
Yeah, we run an interview process, and I'd like to have more candidates right now, but we have 2 openings, and not really many candidates right now, because no one really wants to go into law enforcement. But, with that being said, we run an interview process first. It starts off with sergeants. The sergeants will run an interview process. We're just talking patrolmen right now. Patrolmen will bring that person in, as long as they meet the qualifications. Sergeants will run the process. Process from there, we'll whittle it down to 1 to 3. That's when, the deputy, the lieutenant, myself, and usually the manager from HR is involved as well. If we feel it's a good fit from the ones that the sergeants have already interviewed, then I'll write that up and I'll send it to the board saying, this is the interview process, this is what we had, this is where we're at now, I'd like to bring this person in front of you for appointment. So, in my 7 years as chief, they have not told me no. However, in my 23 years here in Littleton, I have seen it, where it was overridden when the chief brought 2 in front of the select board, his recommendation, and he was overridden. That person didn't last very long, it was actually back to being a patrolman.
I think I had a similar notion, which maybe we can just go clarify, but like that some of those were brought to the select board that was more essentially ceremonial, like yes, we sort of accept you, versus an actual necessary step
Yes.
in the recruitment process.
Is it ceremonial? Pretty much. You're going to accept the department head or the chief's recommendation as to who we're appointing.
But it still has to
It still
actually
has to
legally
actually
happen.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the challenges we face right now when it comes to finding employees, we talked about the fact that he has 2 openings, is that we have a thimble full of candidates and a pool full of openings throughout both police and fire services. So that ability to very quickly act upon a good candidate is incredibly important. So one of the things that that I take advantage of is being able to very quickly get people in for interviews, and typically the same day, if it's somebody, typical bringing 2, 3, 4 people, but by the end of that day, be able to say, hey, we're gonna offer you a job. And then HR will send the formalized letter over to that person. What we found is that if you have sometimes even 2 or 3 days between the interview and your decision, they're already working somewhere else, and we're starting over. So, we've hired 8 people, 9 people, I think 9 people in the last year, and one of the successes to that has been being able to get those job offers out to the right candidates as quickly as possible.
And we just missed out on 2 because of that last week. So. But it was an inefficiency on our department getting back to them as to when we're going to set the meetings up and whatnot. But they're in the academy, and Harvard's hiring 4 people, 4 officers right now. Air's hiring 2 officers. Groton's hiring 2 officers. It's all around us. There's openings everywhere. And if you don't jump on it, we offered the job to one of the kids last week, and he said, "Oh, can I see the contract?" I know what he's doing. He's job shopping. He's looking at the contract from Harvard, looking at the contract from Air. It's just a given. It's what they do. They're going to go for the best opportunity. Can't say that I blame them, but they're comparing, the union contract here to the union contract at Harvard, the union contract at Air, and so on and so forth. And we're just 1 or 2 here and there, whereas, Lowell, they're down 20 officers right now.
So just playing devil's advocate a little bit, because I feel like we need to get it straight in our own heads to be able to make these arguments, because we heard also the other day that some of the finance industry people in the state are also in popular demand, and it can be very, very challenging also to hire people in that field. I think they were talking about assessors. So from that perspective, we're saying having a really robust kind of standardized recruitment process can be beneficial to the town, to be able to be competitive and to get the right people. What we're hearing from you is actually having something that is a little bit more internal to the department is more efficient. And so how would you square those 2 things?
So right now, what we have been doing, our last 2 hires have been internal hires. They came on as younger individuals into our dispatch center. They were dispatchers, and they wanted to be police officers. We knew that. They put their time in there. We had an opening. We advertised internally first. They were the ones who applied, and we ended up eventually hiring both of them, sending them both to the academy. We have a very young department right now, so this round of hirings, we were actually put it out there and did not do internal posting. We put it out there to see if we could get someone with some experience and they want to come and work for us. Unfortunately, the ones with experience are pretty much settled in with, 4 or 5 weeks vacation compared to coming to a new department where they get 1 week vacation. So it's a give and take.
Is that something to do with just the size of also the departments that you run, that there is a sort of a deeper bench? When we're thinking about maybe some of these other positions in town, one isn't pulling from people within the system. Maybe you have your own pipeline already to a certain extent.
From other departments in town, or?
Yeah, from within your own department, it sounds like you have a sort of succession pipeline that you can rely on. I'm just trying to figure out, where's the difference between the way that you recruit efficiently and effectively as the police and fire departments versus another department in town.
Yeah, so it comes from a couple different places. It can come internally, so we do have call firefighters. Sometimes when you have someone who's approaching that time where they're available or capable of being hired into a full-time position, that's a very easy person to hire because they already know the community, they already know the expectations. And they may not know it, but they might be interviewing for 2 years prior to actually showing up to an interview. So it gives you a lot of comfort in when hiring those people. But sometimes when you're looking at, so specific to us, we're hiring paramedics, we don't generally have too many paramedics coming up through the call department, so we're hiring people from outside. And that's a matter of attracting them away from other departments or, taking people who have just come out of paramedic school, for instance.
I've attended the last 2 Super Saturday sessions, so I've heard your presentations. It could be that I don't remember it, but I think I've learned more here with regard to the hiring and possibly losing candidates with regard to shopping different communities, that sort of thing. And so that makes me want to, kind of ask for consideration of, I think as the public, I think we benefit from understanding that situation. If we're losing and not able in whatever regard to attract candidates that you two individually feel like that's a missed opportunity and the community is not being, I think that's very worthy of a momentary comment during Super Saturday or some other forum. So that's a comment. I thank you for hearing it. Separately, I'm interested in, do you feel with regard to your budget, annual budget, your capital plans, your 5-year plans, should you have such, multi-year plans, do you feel those have adequate, proper opportunity for you to be heard and informing others such that you feel it's a good process and so leave it alone? Or are there aspects that we should, how do we elevate your communication? Because as you said, you're serving the community, you're reporting to a group that's elected, to serve the community and represents the community. I'm just looking to make sure that there's enough of that grounding, because again, I find myself learning something, and it could be that I just wasn't an adequate listener.
Yeah, I think that, I've only been back a year, but I think that there's ample opportunities to certainly get the messaging out. I think we have really good employees throughout the town. We have a very good select board that they want to make sure that they know what's happening, what they can do to help us be successful in our jobs, which is incredibly important. And that recruiting piece is obviously paramount to our success. We've been very fortunate that we've been able to bring in a lot of very highly capable candidates in the last year into the department, and we have an absolutely rock solid department. So, using the fact that we're on TV right now, I'm going to share that again, given the opportunity.
Good.
Since you bring it up, I'm going to go through the door. And I think that that's an important piece also to attracting candidates, right? That culture in the organization. And in that organization, meaning larger, right, starting from the board down through every position in town, I think that's important for even us attracting firefighters and police officers.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-on question is, assume we go to a strong town manager and assume the town manager now appoints your positions, you're still strong chiefs. Does that have any effect on recruitment? Would you perceive any effect?
I don't perceive any. I do not. The only thing I would see is that, again, he would be the appointing authority at that point, or the hiring, and we could butt heads on who we want to hire against who we don't want. We know we don't. We know one is better than the other, and we are transparent with all of that. I can see some pushback.
Yeah. Can I clarify the question though? Because when you say strong town manager, are you saying, meaning that the police chief and fire chief would report to them, or just in general?
No, that they would report.
Okay, because we
like,
can also
like
have a
the
strong
direction.
town manager where you all are still reporting to the select board, do you see any impact there in your hiring?
So if the wheel's not broken, what are we trying to fix?
Well, there's other
Other
places in
well,
town,
we
not
just
you
asked
guys,
one
but the rest of the
question.
town.
I
Does
understand
that, does that impact you at all?
No.
But I mean, everybody will say that to us. It's not broken, so.
And yeah, I'm not implying, I'm not implying it was broken, but I like to, every avenue, try to understand
No,
what
I
the
totally
implications of
understand
the
the other
decisions are.
aspects of it, and I do get it. I totally understand that. I just, yeah.
I think it could have an impact. It all depends on, it's all about relationships, right? So if the relationship between the fire chief and the town manager, and say they're in that fully appointing position, if that's a poor relationship, people are gonna be able to sense that, and you're gonna have candidates that are gonna go, nope. With a full board, yeah, you may have a person, maybe even two people that you're butting heads with it at some point or another. But if a majority are still working with the fire chief in a constructive way, it's gonna have a far lesser impact, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You get a little more insulation.
Since you both report to the select board, do you also go to department head meetings with the town administrator would be there? So the town administrator is still getting information from you all the time, what's going on, even though you're not a direct report to him. Is that correct?
And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier to Charlotte, like, the town administrator needs to be informed for the day-to-day operations, which both of us do at department head meetings every 2 weeks. And if I can't make it, my deputy goes. If Steele can't make it, his deputy goes. Someone's always there to represent one of our departments at the department head meetings. As far as transparency within the departments, yeah, the town administrator, town manager needs to know exactly what's going on.
But it sounds like that might be an area where it's currently the practice to do that,
Correct.
but may not be actually either in policy or in any kind of written down place. So if you were to say, you know, that's maybe one thing that you'd want to continue, so.
Fair.
Yeah, I would just say, I think it's actually a reflection of the select board's policy. If, you know, this select board in particular really prioritizes that, and I think everyone knows how much we prioritize transparency and working together in the same direction, and so, you know, I think, not that either of these two needed to hear it, but, you know, if anybody did need to hear it, that's what we're there for.
But then that could be something that is, again, sort of noted in policy, that is, again, it's, you know, we're trying to juggle a lot of different permutations of what this could look like. But if you can have a strong town manager, but still have fire and police chiefs report to the select board. There are carve-outs that we've been learning that, you know, charters work in all different ways. But if you had that, you'd still then want to have this kind of preservation of the communication, the relationship, the information, so that the town manager would still be informed in the day-to-day. Versus if we obviously reporting to the town manager, then it's sort of implied within that reporting relationship. So, okay.
I think, like, specific to Groton, the town manager was still who I reported to on a day-to-day basis, but ultimately I worked for the select board, and it worked really, really well. If there was something that was beyond what I could do as a strong chief, the town manager could, hey, you know what? We have this issue. For instance, when I first got to Groton, the wrong types of nozzles were on the fire trucks, to the point where it was dangerous for the firefighters and the public, because it was just that wrong. He immediately said, holy cow, you're telling me what I think you're saying. Yep. And he goes, there you go fix it. Do whatever you have to do to go fix it. And he had the financial control to be able to make sure that we had the resources to fix this crisis. You know, for me, that was a big change of, like, okay, we don't need to go ask the board or fix it. You know, and I think it worked well, you know. If at some point I did something wrong, then it would have been dealt with through the board after a hearing, right? So if I was going to be disciplined, the board would do the discipline. Contracts were done through the board, so every 3 years they met with the select board to do the contracts. Town manager was involved, but he was more involved from just the financial side. The actual negotiation was with the board. You know, I think it worked pretty well. You know, coming here, there was actually a little bit of a transition where I'm going, okay, it's not exactly the same, but I run a lot of things the same way through Jim, because that's what I've been working with for the last 10 years.
I'm just gonna ask you, so if that same situation happened in Littleton, all of a sudden you realize you got all the wrong nozzles, what would you do? What's the process here?
Well, first thing I do is call Steve Venuti and
Steve, we need to find $50,000.
He's shaking his head.
So it would be virtually the same process as what I do, is it would start with Jim, and, hey, I have this major problem, what's our avenue to correct this? You know, it's something that I can't accomplish from within our budget.
So maybe going back to your question, like that there may be some benefit to having a strong TM, town manager, that because of the nature of that person's role, they are able to connect more, to move things more quickly, to have those relationships, that actually enables maybe you guys to get things done more quickly. And again, putting existing people and personalities out of the equation, you know, Littleton 10 years from now, 20 years from now, a strong TM having more authority over resources and other departments can sort of move and shake things a little bit faster, perhaps, even if they're not actually your direct manager, if that makes sense.
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Having worked in both systems, I can see the benefit of having that strong town manager control, you know, more of those pieces, especially as a community grows and your employee base grows.
That was actually going to lead into my question, if I could jump in. As you think about, which I'm assuming you have, the growth of the town, like that new development coming in and, you know, the huge population jump. And as you think about your departments and what you need to do to accommodate that and how you're going to grow, which of these town structures might help you do that better? Do you find one or the other limiting or, you know, enabling? How are you feeling? How are you working towards plan, and how might we use this opportunity to support the plans that you might have in mind?
So, I'll just speak myself. We have put a plan in place for the police department, and it was up until this year, because we knew the budget was so tight this year, we've added one body per year, because we know what's coming down the road. We're behind already, and we've added one officer every year. It was our succession plan. I said it when I went through the hiring process, we were going to do that. As far as going forward with the town manager, having him might make the approval for more bodies, I think that takes away from the Super Saturday where we're going to be in the succession going forward. It could be a good thing. It could be more efficient, where he says, yeah, we can definitely add 3 or 4 more bodies now, whereas we might not be able to do it.
And are staff the only growth factor, or is there other
Oh, no.
planning or other?
No.
Yeah, so how does that
So
kind
I talked to
of?
the police station,
Yeah.
so, we're maxed out right now.
Right.
Finance is knowing that, finance committee's known it for the last 2 years. My liaison came in this past year, we actually toured the whole station to say, okay, we're almost at 25 sworn, we have 25 lockers. One small asset of the whole picture. Records room, way behind. We're already able to fill that records room. With a certain amount of records we have to keep on storage. And actually paper copies, not electronic. Where we stand administration-wise, where we see in the next 3 to 5 years. Administration-wise, we're gonna need records clerks. The department's gonna boom in the next 5 to 10 years. and we know it's going to, especially with the new development going in. So, do I see some efficiencies with the town manager? Most likely, yes. Finance-wise, as far as keeping the feel of Littleton and what we want to hopefully contain, I don't know. I can't really answer that. We're going to be in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll give you some of that, that ability to quickly pivot on issues as they come up. When we look at it from the fire side, just our preliminary estimates for the new project at 550 King Street, we're looking at a massive growth in the number of emergency calls, to the point that we're going to likely have to put a third ambulance on, so we're gonna have to hire an additional 8 personnel. Well, the building that was just built not long ago can support 4 more. So now you have some capital needs that are gonna go with employee needs. Right now, we're kind of sitting at our max capacity of what people can do in terms of the number of calls that they're doing in a 24-hour period, the wear and tear that takes on them, the resulting need for time off, which creates holes, and it just starts to snowball. So we see that on a regular basis now. But I think having a town manager as that point person to kind of, all right, here's all the moving parts, I think is incredibly important in the grand scheme of where the town has to go. That person has to be able to sit, look at what do we have today, where are we going, and what's our risks or what's our threats to where we're headed.
Thank you.
On that positive note.
Hey, you want to ask any more questions?
I think it's really key, and I think it's key to what we're doing. And one of the things that came to my mind is like, there's gonna be so much going on, the town manager may be so busy with all these other things that maybe you don't wanna just add more things to it as well, but there's a lot of, well, let's say, we'll have those discussions down the road. Karen, is there anything you wanna comment in general on all this? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I just did, but.
We have the best employees in this state.
Definitely the best police and fire, I know that.
No, I think, for me, I would say it was very interesting that, can't remember who asked about it, but, you would really rather report to 5 people than 1, which would be my personal nightmare, but, so, to me, that was a very strong argument, looking at it in terms of management. I do think, having somebody looking at the entire town as a whole, though, is really important. We can't, we need one person working on a capital plan for the town as a whole, not most of the town, except for these 2 really big, huge, important parts of it. So I think it's going to be a bit of a balancing act, but.
So is there a reason, I guess I've really thought about, honestly, the financial piece of this, that because you report to the select board, then the town manager isn't responsible for your budget?
I think that would go down into policy, right? So the select board can say, here's the budget policy, the town manager does it. That's where we go with that, whether it's capital or operating budget, that's where we would end up taking it. Right? And that can be done through policy, or that can be done through that day-to-day reporting option that you have, right? So it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can kind of call out the pieces you want. The appointment piece can stick with the board. The day-to-day can be with the town manager. That's what I worked in 10 years in Raleigh. I liked it. It worked really well. I understood the system. I understood how it worked, and it streamlined a lot of stuff. So I'm okay with that.
I mean, I was on FinCom. I never thought that you guys were any different than all the other departments from my standpoint. To me, it was just, there were all these,
No, I know what you're
I mean,
saying.
you're
Yeah.
public servant, you're different from that standpoint, but you're another department with a budget and a capital plan, all those things, and you all come together. I've really never had any in my mind, there's any differentiation that you from anybody else.
I think Steve will talk.
Oh, they're special.
Oh, yeah.
I think Steve will
You guys
talk.
always got called Chief, everybody else had a first name, I remember that.
You don't have to remember names though, isn't that nice?
There was, I mean, leading up to, before we get to the finance meeting, there was several meetings with the finance director, the TA, like
Yeah.
Super Saturday, which I don't agree with Super Saturday, but anyways.
We're moving on Friday.
Okay, that's fine.
See, I knew it was a Saturday piece.
No, yeah, there was, I think the behind the scenes before it even got to the finance committee was a lot of the work that was done before it actually went. And, you know, Steve would tell you, we're not sitting well, like, really look at your capital request again, please. So, you know, we sharpen the pencil and go back and look at what we really and truly need, what we don't need, and what we can do well, what we can push down the road, what we can't. And I think when I got in front of the finance committee, it was pretty streamlined and already to go.
And I still don't really understand that discussion really is relevant to whether you report to the town manager or the select board. Do you have something to add to that, Steve? Am I missing something here?
Financially, if I had to walk out of this meeting with one thing that Mark said was, make your charter as top level
Okay, right,
as you
yeah,
can,
absolutely,
and you
right.
have your policies.
Yeah.
To talk about the things that Steele was just doing. The budget is controlled by the town manager and presented a balanced budget to the select board and finance committee. It's the way we run it now, it's the way
Right.
we've run it for the past 3 or 4
Okay,
years.
all right, that's,
Yeah.
okay.
I think it's worked well, but I don't, Karen can.
No, that's what I wrote in my notes, is that, you know, this is what they changed to, but we already do that.
Okay.
And I think some of the conversation we've had is making sure that we also have clarity for the town about that's the way we do it. I think we've mentioned a few times as a committee, in order to understand that as a resident, you sort of have to spend, I don't know how many hours we've already spent here. It's really hard to figure that out. And so maybe for us, a charter, you know, one of the main purposes it might serve is just to actually clarify the way that we do things, and to make it easy for people to kind of come up to speed with something in one document versus searching through millions of bylaws or having to interview a whole bunch of different people. And I think something you mentioned around just the one person having at least operational oversight, you said earlier, to me it's sort of like, you know, how one runs a company, or you can say, okay, you've got your CEO setting the sort of overall vision and policy, but you need a COO to actually get stuff done. And they may have different levels of authority over the various different C-suite, or, you know, but they interact with it all and they make it happen. Or you have the director of a movie that says, I want 16 killer whales jumping out of the ocean, and you're the producer who's like, how the heck are we going to make that happen? You know, but there's a sort of this balance, and I like that we're trying to find that balance, I think, and your comments have been very enlightening. So thank you.
I think my only word of caution as you do the charter is a few communities have run into an issue where they put specific language in their charter when it comes to appointment, and it can actually undo portions of either strong chief. And it's one of those things where it's purely an omission. There's nothing nefarious about it. But what occurs is 6 or 8 years later, somebody goes, hey, do you know that the fire chief hasn't been, for instance, the appointing authority for the firefighters for the last 6 or 8 years? Well, now many employees over the last 6 to 8 years you don't have anymore like that. So that requires a lot of the lawyering at that point to get that figured out, and it spends money where honestly money does not need to be spent. So that's one of those ones to just kind of keep in the back of your mind, and rest assured that I will make sure that I read through it to make sure it doesn't happen on my side. I know he's going to read through it as well, because again, one little mistake can cost us a lot of money down the road and create a ton of problems. So
Go ahead.
So in that regard, how much time should we give you to ensure that you've each had adequate time with all the responsibilities and challenges that you have? What's weeks, month, how much time, because I couldn't agree more, and I've heard this before and previously, and it's absolutely critical that we not misfire, period. So therefore, your input has to happen, and with that is a responsibility, I feel, for us to give you adequate time to allow you to do your detailed review and get any questions asked, answered, et cetera, shape it, change it, et cetera. So what is that time period that you need, because you know your responsibilities and all the crises you deal with routinely that can, I'm gonna do this today, oh, no, I'm not, do it tomorrow, no, not doing tomorrow either, et cetera, so.
It all depends on how long the document is, right? So I've seen charters that are 12 pages long.
Yeah.
I've seen charters that are 50 pages long, so I'm a slow reader. So it all depends on how many pages it is to kind of go through. One of the ways that you can kind of get around that is by reaffirming the strong fire chief and strong police chief right in that, and then it codifies that component of it, sort of gives you the out of having covered it.
Or rely on town council to figure out whether there are any other subsequent chapters that
Yep.
derail it.
And maybe that's the simpler solution, is to go, hey, get any concerns you have to town council, we can send those and let them figure out if there's any of those concerns lining up.
Don't have to agree to this now, but I think if you were able to attend one of our public hearings, that would be really great. To not only obviously for you to continue to ask questions, although you can at any time, but I think it would be really nice to also have that discussion with the other residents who want to show up as well, and just to hear your kind of thoughts in the process, again, for transparency, right? Like, have you asked the police chief about this? Well, because I know that's what we really, really, really want to make sure that this doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, to the extent that we can make that widely known to everybody.
Anything else for us? Anything you want to tell us?
Nope, that was it.
Okay, that was good. That was very helpful.
Super.
Very, very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you. No
I
problem.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you so
I'm glad you guys included us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And,
And you can even finish on
I
time.
know, and if you, obviously, you know who we are, where we are now. If you hear stuff out there, and I'm saying that to the outside world too. Anything you're hearing out there, come talk to us.
My neighbor.
There's no- Okay, thank you. Thank you again very
Thanks so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
Okay,
What a great night.
okay, we're gonna approve our minutes. One more thing.
Well, can I, as
Yeah.
Steve said,
Okay.
because Karen and Steve are here, I'm just interested, I know, we asked them, do you have any other comments that you'd like to share, to provide, or give us thoughts with regard to where we're headed?
I'm checking.
Okay.
I thought I wrote something down. Oh, there was one comment that sort of struck me. Elected boards should be in charge of policy, and elected positions should be in charge of policy, and the town clerk was administrative. And if you accept the first part, that the elected positions should set policy, that seemed to me to be a very good guidepost. But then, of course, the question is who should be setting the policies. And I think that for most, I just think that for the town clerk question, I think you've talked to Diane already.
She hasn't come to, she has not come in officially on this. She came in on other topics and it came up, but we have not had her come in specifically to talk about that yet.
So I think it would, I would be interested too in understanding more about what Diane does every day. I know it's a lot, But what the, you know, what the day-to-day is, what the minutia are, I don't know as well. And I think that to be able to make that, to draw that line, is this more administrative or is this policy? You know, that would be an important step.
Yeah. Yeah. That will definitely happen.
It's interesting, Collins Center gave us a little grid last meeting that spoke about the criteria or the characteristics of an elected position and an appointed position. And I'm not letting go of this thing because I believe this corresponded a lot with what Mark said.
Okay.
And I find that this, if we use this, could be extremely helpful in navigating through those decisions.
Okay. All right. Anything else? All right, so do you want to go over to minutes? Maybe want to make a motion? Oh, sorry.
No,
Sam?
I just have one
Yep.
clarification. In the discussion of the position of town moderator, I'm looking at it on my phone, so it's probably like the second page of the minutes. The first line says, while not a competitive election, discussion generally favored maintaining this as an elected position. I think more accurately stated, while not a competitive election, the Mass General laws mandate this as an elected position. So it's not even a position that can be changed.
Right.
Just to make that clear.
Yeah, I
Good at it.
assume that
Yeah.
too.
Thank you.
Okay. I think you're gonna bring up the $1,000 compensation.
Oh, no, that
I'd vote for it.
that was
You
a,
did get that right, Steve? $1,000?
that was a,
So with that,
no, they took my stipend away from me.
I remember, yeah, you
Either-
got $50 or something,
It's
didn't you?
it was either Keith Bergman or it was the FinCom. I tend to believe it was Keith, yeah.
Actually, are you compensated in any way, shape, or form?
No, I am not, no.
Let's get it on the warrant.
So, yeah, we're gonna have
I'm
two
sorry,
town
just-
meetings. No, that's not,
Okay.
no.
so I'll make that change to the minutes.
Oh, that would be great, thank you. Yep.
Before you ask them, if I have one closing thought, and I just wanted to comment. My thought is that nothing's broken here. We're not fixing things here. We're figuring out what needs to be in place for the next 10, 20 years. We're not fixing broken things here. We are looking at how to best support the governance of this town into the future. That's what we're doing. So it's not about today, it's about the future. That's my only, I have some other summary thoughts that are beginning to evolve in my own brain about maybe fundamental premises, if that's the plural of premise, I don't know, about what some of the things that might be guiding our recommendations. And the first is that there's nothing broken here. We're not fixing anything. We're figuring out how to best govern this town 10, 15, 20 years from now. A very different town than it is today. A much more complex, larger, more complex town than it is today, and certainly than it was 5 years ago.
True.
Very good point. I agree.
Okay.
I have a non-minutes related
Okay.
question. Is that okay? I think, I can't remember who said it earlier, but I feel like there are still a few things hanging, and I guess maybe that's also tracker related as I went up to update it. There's a couple big questions that we have now had people in. We gathered the data. We probably are in a position to take a kind of, if not a vote, at least a sort of leaning vote. And if we do want to prep a few positions for the public hearing, should we use our next meeting, or at what point would we say, okay, like we're just going to now hash this one out and say like, where do we stand on this, this, and this, and maybe just pick 3 things and kind of make, because a lot of the tracker things are like in progress, but I feel like we've got enough momentum to at least.
Okay. We'll do that for the next meeting. We'll spend an hour. And then I'm still gonna have some, because we still have to get, we said we were gonna have assessors and,
Park and Rec.
what was it?
Park and Rec.
Park and Rec.
So we give them an hour and we can have an hour going through that. I think that would be good. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause if we're trying to get to that
Yeah.
public thing.
Well, and plus, we just need, we need to do
Check
this
those
anyway.
off, and then
Yeah.
I guess the other question.
So so they, I don't want to put it on the public forum, and I don't want to put everything on Charlotte either, because she's agreed to do the tracker, but let's come organized with what we're going to talk about in that hour, right? So somebody needs to go through the tracker and figure out these are the top items we should discuss. So,
Yeah, I mean, it does emerge pretty, I mean, maybe
It's
everybody
pretty
can
obvious
take a
when you
look
go
at
through
it, but
it?
it is
Okay.
this, overall strong manager.
Yeah.
Do we agree on that? And then it's the appointed, it's the appointing authority question residing within the town
Yeah.
manager, and the carve-outs, so police and fire,
And water.
and water,
Electric,
yeah, electric. But at least the ones that occurred to me that are possible for us to at least make a decision because we have the data to hand would be those ones. But yeah, I think I updated the tracker today, so it should be on there. And
so people can look, and if you want to look at it, and if you think you have something that really needs to be on that list, then
I think looking
let
at
us know.
section 4 that we did last week too, there's probably some of those boards and committees we can start
Right.
looking at.
and be like, at least yes, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Appointed, not appointed.
Yeah.
Because I think the idea was when we did the public forum, we'd explain what the process is and say, not final, but here's some key topics. And just be able to put that out
And here's some
there
examples.
to guide
Right,
the
yeah.
discussion, so it wasn't a complete free-for-all,
Right.
which it will evolve into, but, at least to start with, here's the premise, what are your thoughts?
So
Why or why not?
I thought next meeting, can we talk about the proposed agenda for the,
That was going to be my second
For the,
Yes,
question.
oh, that's a good,
Yeah.
that'd be
And
part of it,
talk
that's a
about
good
a
point,
date.
yeah. Because I know it came out, and I did not get a chance to look at it, I
Right.
apologize. But Joe showed me the detailed work that you did, so thank you very much.
Yeah, so for the rest of the committee, we did put down a straw man agenda for the public hearing and listed a sort of logistics checklist. So we sent that to Betsy and Joe, and then do you want us
Yeah,
to
just go ahead and send it
circulate
out.
that
Go
to
ahead and send
everybody?
it out to
Okay.
everybody.
So I think that's good. I feel like it's a little bit in between. We discussed having Park and Rec and the assessors, et cetera, and if we're gonna try to cut off that group, then I'll tell you that some input I've received is there's gonna be a lineup of other people that we've discussed briefly here. There's gonna be people, well, why didn't I get a chance to be heard before going to a public meeting either? So
there's
I'm
gonna be
just,
more
I'm
than
just
one.
trying, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
point out how
Everybody's
if
not
you,
gonna be
if
happy,
you
we
take
know
a
that.
little bit of a nibble,
Yeah.
it's a difficult,
Yeah.
It's
and
trying
there's
to
already
balance the
people.
timing of the meeting with the progress
that-
that we've made to date, because if we wait until we have all the
Cool.
answers, it might be too
I
late.
couldn't agree more.
So-
I brought this up about
Yeah.
6 weeks ago as to my
Yeah.
Just
concern.
have to talk
So our
about it.
philosophy is communicate early and often. We're not done. We're still talking to people. We're going to continue. If you want to come in, we
Come
can
in.
send you an invitation if you want it, if you need it. But we want to communicate early and often. Mark even, I thought whoever's question that was, he was suggesting probably a public forum earlier than we're talking about doing. We're getting to the halfway point of our work, I think. And I think I'm getting very antsy about conducting a public forum. And so my answer to that question is, there's nothing in concrete. But first of all, we have no authority to do anything on this committee, none, none. Everything we do is recommendation only. I think we say that in our agenda. We point out that we're effectively an advisory committee. So communicate early and often. We don't know how many public forums we're going to have, probably at least 2, and we want to start holding them. We're not done with meetings with people, and we've talked about the importance of bringing in not just selected people, but probably a wide swath of people because of the very concern. Oh, what about?
I've been the one that's been talking about it. Everybody's looking at me, but yeah, I've been raising this point. So
As
I
have
agree.
I. I think I was the one who said, I don't like this one-off approach, doing one-off meetings with people. Bring them in here, bring them in here, so that we can have robust discussions with everybody and anybody who wants to do that, because if you don't, we're gonna have a problem down the road.
I think everybody is sort of agreeing that we're essentially not, say, setting a low bar for the public forum, but like set that bar low enough that we can just do it. and do another one, and do another one. And I think once we get the logistics down a little bit as well, it'll be like, oh, we've got another public forum, come along. Like, I think just cracking that nut and making sure that we can get going, I think is, yeah, I see that everybody's sort of essentially in agreement with that, right? We want to.
Would we have a problem having that first meeting, public meeting, and we haven't got to talking about the Board of Health and the Planning Board? I mean, I can see us, this is how far we haven't even got to that yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
so we have to do it.
Right?
Okay, that's-
So we have to do.
I wanted to make sure we want to try to get them all in, you know.
I don't think we have time,
Yeah.
unfortunately. yeah.
And honestly, it's good for us not. We get partway through and this is our process and somebody comes up with some reason like, but you missed this. It's like, oh, well, that's good. We know that now before we go through the rest of it. So it's all good, from my standpoint, right?
Yeah, and it's time to address it.
So check your calendars before.
And when
next
everyone
meeting.
gets this from the work that they did, this is impressive about the meetings coming up, because if it was me, I would have said, it's this date and we're gonna talk about, and that's it. They got everything taken care of. I'm very impressed with this.
Right. It is very detailed, including a very substantial open discussion period of time. There are time slots for every topic on the agenda. I don't take credit for that. I love it. There are time slots for every topic.
Detail-oriented, Kevin, is that what you're
You
telling
think?
us?
I'll give you my predictive index profile. I'm called a specialist on the predictive index. Check it out. Go home tonight and Google what a predictive index specialist is. This is Kevin Brogan. So I love it, and I love the substantial period of time for open discussion. I think 45 minutes, half of it, I think,
Yep.
as proposed.
Cool.
Okay, all right.
Move the approval of the minutes for last meeting
As amended.
As amended.
Is amended.
as amended.
Second.
Bye, Steve.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Oh, any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed.
When is our next meeting?
September 15th.
I
think it's the
Second, the second Monday in September, I think. Let me see.
October 20.
No, September, Kevin, come on.
Oh, September 29th.
No,
No, there's one before
There's
that.
one before that. I swear it's the,
It's 14 days before that.
I'm pretty certain it's the
15th or something,
15th.
yeah.
Yeah, because I set up a different appointment for the 22nd because I saw that was open.
Yeah, it's the 15th, and then there's another one on the 29th after that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. September
Yeah.
15th.
I land at noon, so I'll hopefully.
What was that thing you said, predictability?
Yeah, right.
Just the
Details.
UK this time, a work trip, but that one's a little more reliable, I think.
Oh.